Hey everyone, my name is Daryl Fielding, and I'm excited to share some concepts with you today. I've been asked to talk about a technique that I learned and used in my mentoring business called the Deathbed Goals. And so it's a very simple technique, and I want to explain to you just a couple of things you need to understand. And then you're going to want to grab a journal or a piece of paper, something you can write on. Um, you could also do an audio recording, which I think is also really cool to do. You could do that with your phone. But the concept of the deathbed goals is that it's a technique to help you identify and capture the the goals that you want to accomplish. I talk with people, and quite frequently, I'll encounter people who say, they're not really sure what they want to do. They just know there's just something inside of them that tells them there's something more they should be doing with their lives. They've got a good job, or they might be in a good relationship, but at the same time, they just feel like there's something missing and they can't quite verbalize it. And so I've liked this technique because it really helped me and it's helped others to really identify what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you want to achieve. So the concept is that you're at the end of your life. You're not on your deathbed. You're not dying, but you're at the end of your life and you've accomplished everything you ever wanted to do. And I call it the deathbed goals because you could literally pass away and have zero regrets because you've done everything you ever wanted to do. And take an aspect of your life. You could take finances, you could take relationships, you could take, your family life, friends, but this is the dating Olympics. So let's take your relationships. Imagine you're at the end of your life and you have no regrets in your relationship. Your relationship with your significant other has been amazing. And I want you to put yourself there in your mind's eye and think about, what does that look like? Where are you? And write about that. And don't write about it like, oh, I hope that when I get to that point in my life, I hope my relationship is like this. I want you to put yourself there in your mind's eye and describe it as if you're actually there, that it's actually been achieved and you're just describing what it looks like. What does it feel like? Are you at your house? What does your home look like? And who's there with you? Your spouse, your children, your grandchildren. And how does it feel? Do you feel peace? Do you feel joy? Do you feel gratitude? What's the feelings that you have? What are the things that you know now that you would love to share most with your children, with your grandchildren? Because you've achieved everything you've ever wanted to do. You have no regrets. And what's powerful about this is when you read it back, if you exclude the question that kicked this all off, you're at the end of your life, what does it look like? And you just read your description of what your life is like, it reads as if it's how it is right now. And this is powerful because what this is creating for your mind is the goal of what you want it to create. And that's one of the powerful secrets of this whole concept, is that you are a creator. You create things with your thoughts and your stories and the things that you hold in your mind. Have you ever met someone who just said, I'm just an unlucky person? Or, I always attract that type of guy, or I always try attract that type of woman, and it's not good. There's a company, a Fortune 500 company, and I forget the name of it, but one of their interview questions is, are you lucky? Now, at a very simplistic level, why would you want to hire somebody who's not lucky, right? Why would you want to hire somebody that bad things happen to them? But by the same token, wouldn't you want to have someone that works for you that everything always works out, good things happen, like they always get a good result? Now, what's powerful is that both of those stories, I'm unlucky or everything always works out for me, are just that, they're stories. And what's important to recognize is that our results don't validate our stories. Our stories create our results. And there's actually quite a bit of science behind this. In psychology, there's logotherapy that uses this technique of looking forward. Now, our stories are a combination of our experiences, things that we were told, things that we witnessed, things that we experienced growing up in our life that helped us to begin to give us a way to make decisions and interpret the world as we see it. It's the meaning that we assign to those experiences and things that we were told that become our stories. And a story that I run into a lot, that a lot of people struggle with. It's funny because, as human beings, we all have struggle and we all think we're unique. We all think we're the only ones that have it. But a very common one is that I'm not enough. I'm not good enough. And the thing about the deathbed goals is we're not really going into the past and looking into why we have those stories. We want to disrupt that feedback loop and give our mind something that we want to create, a new reality that we want it to create. And so it's important that you understand also that we're not evaluating, as you write this all down, you're not evaluating whether this is true and real and has happened. Okay, that's not the purpose of this exercise. And your mind, when you read that back, or if you record the audio and play it back, your mind's going to be tempted to say, hey, that's not true. That hasn't happened yet. And that's not the purpose of this exercise. So it's important that you catch yourself and don't let yourself go there. We're not evaluating whether it's true. We're just creating the target. We're creating the goal. We're creating the vision of what we want our mind to create. Well, there's a concept of synchronicity, and I'm going to show you a little video clip. There's a really interesting video clip on YouTube that kind of gives a scientific explanation behind this principle of synchronicity and how it happens all throughout nature. It happens at the subatomic level and at the level of planets and stars, in animals, in chemistry. It's really fascinating. And I want to give accreditation to the person who put this together. The name of the YouTube channel is Veritasium, Veritasium. And at the time of this recording, they have over 9 million subscribers. And the name of the video is called The Secret of Synchronization. It's about a 20-minute video. I've just taken about a 2.5-minute clip out of this to just illustrate in nature and in chemistry and in different ways that this principle or this phenomenon of synchronization works. Because as your mind is picturing what you want, it kicks into motion in nature through a myriad of different ways to synchronize what you see with the physical world and bring that into existence. And so that's why it's really important that we recognize what thoughts we have running through our mind and what we're thinking and what we're holding in our mind on a consistent basis. So watch this little clip and we'll talk about it a little bit more.
These metronomes don't have exactly the same natural frequency, and yet they still beat in time. The fireflies of Southeast Asia are apparently good enough friends because they synchronize their flashes. Even though each one has its own particular frequency at which it likes to flash, they couple to each other strongly enough so that hundreds, even thousands, can flash together in the same split second. There's a great simulation of this by Nicky Case. You start with individual fireflies just doing their thing, and then you can turn on the interaction between them. Now in the Kuromoto model, this would mean every firefly has an effect on every other one. But in this simulation, a firefly is only affected by its neighbors. If it sees a flash close by, it nudges its internal clock forward a little bit, so it'll flash sooner than it would have otherwise. Now, what's remarkable about this is even though the interactions are small and close range, over time you can see waves traveling through all the fireflies, and eventually they're all flashing at once.
Like you might think, if you increase the coupling, you just sort of gradually get a system more and more synchronized. That's not what happens. It's sort of like the way water doesn't gradually freeze as you lower the temperature. It's water, water, water as you're lowering the temperature, and then at a critical temperature, the molecules suddenly start to change their state and become solid instead of liquid. And this is a sort of time rather than space version of the same thing. They sort of lock their phases in time once you pass a critical level of coupling. And at that point, the sort of crystallization in time is the phenomenon that we call synchronization.
This is an audience in Budapest applauding after a performance. But what happens next is completely spontaneous. They're not being instructed by anyone. See if you can spot the phase transition.
This phenomenon of synchronization that we've been talking about, one of the things that I find most appealing about it is how universal it is. That it occurs at every scale of nature, from subatomic to cosmic. It uses every communication channel that nature has ever devised, from gravitational interactions, electrical interactions, chemical, mechanical. I mean, you name it. Any way that two things can influence each other, nature uses that to get things in sync.
So I thought that was really interesting because nature uses a myriad of different methods to bring things into synchronization. So when you're holding in your mind the future that you want to have and the relationship that you want to have, nature goes to work to bring that to fruition. By the same token, if we're holding negative thoughts, bitterness, anger, frustration, we're attracting those results into our lives. And that may not be what we want, but the law of attraction, the law of resonance is playing out all the time. So this is a little video clip I put together that just kind of gives kind of a picture representation of how this might work. I use the analogy of crossing a valley to get to our goal, and a bridge and kind of what that is. So take a look at this and we'll discuss it a little bit more. Let's imagine that one of these two people represents you, and that you have a goal that we'll represent with this red wrapped present. Now there's a space that exists between the goal that we see in our mind and actually achieving the goal. And I like to represent that with a valley. It's like what we want is on the other side of this chasm or this valley that we have to cross. So what do we need to cross over and get to our goal? We need a bridge. So what is the bridge? The bridge could represent the action we need to take. And it's true, we need to take action to get results. But the bridge is made up of more than just action. It's a composite of action and emotion. These two components are what I call the bridge. Emotion always leads us to take some sort of action. And when we take action, we always get a result. So principle number 1 is emotion always leads to some sort of action. And principle number 2 is action always produces a result. This part of the process of achieving a goal is governed by natural law. And we can't change the fact of how this works. If we don't like the results, we can always trace it back to our pattern of action. We can trace our pattern of action back to an emotion. So where do these emotions come from? What generates these emotions? These emotions are generated by our stories. Our stories are made up of our thoughts, our words, and the meaning that we attach to them. Our stories are how we see the world and how we interpret what we see. Our stories are what we think we see. Stories don't have to be true. In fact, most of our stories aren't true. Stories are not truth. Stories are emotion magnets. So principle number 3, stories are emotion magnets. When we think of something being true, we often think of it having the same characteristics of natural law. That they can't be changed by us. They're fixed. They are universal. They apply to everyone, and they produce predictable results. but stories are different. Our stories can be changed by us. They are not fixed. They aren't universal. They don't apply to everyone. And the only thing predictable about them is that they attract emotion. The mistake is thinking our stories are truth and that what we see is how things really are. But that is not the case. Natural law is truth. It's things as they really are, really were, and really will be. Stories, on the other hand, are not truth. They are emotion magnets. So principle number 4, our stories don't attract to us what we want. Our stories reverberate out and attract to us the emotions that are synchronized with them. So this is what we call the law of attraction. And it's important to note and underscore that we don't attract to us what we want. We attract to us the emotions that are synchronized with our stories. And sometimes we don't even realize the stories that we have playing in our head. And if we don't, that can be very dangerous, because if we're thinking negative thoughts about ourselves or about the world or about the future, we might just be thinking that we're thinking to ourselves. What we need to realize is that our minds are always sending out thoughts and vibrations into the universe and attracting to us the emotions that are synchronized with them. And again, those emotions always lead to some sort of action, and action always produces results. So we may want a certain quality of life result, like the one represented by the red present, but if we're not mindful of the stories running through our mind on a prolonged basis, we may be surprised when the story attracts to us a bridge that leads to quite a different result. So principle number 5, if we want different results, then we have to manage our emotions by choosing the story that will attract the emotion that is synchronized with our goal. In other words, if we don't actively choose the story that runs in our mind, then we may attract a bridge that puts us on a different, fixed path that is taking us somewhere we don't want to go. The good news is we get to decide our story. Our future isn't fixed. We get to create our stories. We can choose a different story right now. We can attract a different path right now. So it's important to recognize this distinction. Results don't validate your stories. Your stories create your results. You are in control. You are a creative force. So just to summarize, we've talked about deathbed goals. We talked about identifying a target that we're shooting for. We've talked about giving our mind instructions as to what we want to create. And we've kind of shown some little clips, and I gave a little explanation of the law of resonance and a little bit of the science behind that. Go look up that YouTube video. Like I said, it's about 20 minutes long. There's a lot more information that they share in there. But there seems to be something in the universe that creates that synchronization. And once we understand that this is a natural law, this is something that we can't change, but that if we apply it in our goal setting, that we can start to achieve different results. So hopefully this helps. My challenge for you is to take a minute, write down your deathbed goals for your relationships. And again, write it down as if it's already happened. You put yourself in your mind's eye. Don't write about it like, I hope this happens, I hope that happens. Describe it as if it's right now. And where you are, what you feel like, what are the type of activities you're doing. Get very descriptive about it, because that gives your mind instructions, and the universe will go to work to make that synchronize with reality. And so remember, don't let your mind go to evaluating whether it's true or not. That's not the purpose. We're giving your mind instructions. So hopefully this helps. Deathbed goals can make a huge impact. Remember, you are a creative force, and you can decide to change your stories right now. And so it all starts right here. This is a great exercise to get you started. So hope that helps, and excited to hear about some of the results you get from putting this into practice. Thanks.